Sure. Yeah, I spend a lot of time um, in this particular space when it comes to my job as an executive recruiter. And so, yeah, happy to give some tips. I mean, understand that we could talk for probably hours and hours about this, but here's at least a couple of things that I would say that hopefully provide some value to our listeners and those that are in the process of building their CV, their resume. I I guess first off, I would just say that understand that the resume, it doesn't get you the job. The resume, it only gets you in the front door. It it's important. It's very important, but it's what gets you the interview. The interview is what gets you the job, and so understand the difference there. Um, on that note, when it comes to putting together a resume, I think it's also important to understand the role of an HR professional, a talent acquisition professional that you will likely or that will likely see your resume before it gets to the eyes of the hiring manager. HR talent acquisition professionals generally they will see dozens of resumes for every position that they have on their desk, and usually they're working on anywhere from 20 to 50 different roles, sometimes more, sometimes maybe less. If they have a very um, uh, robust talent acquisition team, they may have less. But generally speaking, those that I've worked with over the years, they have a lot of positions on their desk. And so they'll only spend 15, 20 seconds on your resume when it comes across their desk, and they'll skim through it. They will um, have a few thoughts to make sure that you match up with those that are their top potential candidates for the role. And they'll maybe set aside, they'll go from 100 resumes to 20, 25 resumes. And so if your resume is not in place to catch their eye, if it's not unique enough, if it doesn't um, stand out in a good way, it gets thrown to the side. And whether you call it unfair or not, it's what happens in the industry. And so I think it's important to realize that they're going to make that short list and they won't spend very much time on your resume at first. They'll spend time to go through it quickly, 15, 20 seconds. They'll make a pile and then they'll come back to those CVs, those resumes that they thought were the best potential matches. And so you've got to get it through HR, through talent acquisition first with that mindset. And so, on that note, bring the best of your resume to the top. Be very specific about your responsibilities and focus on differentiators. Um, some may question, okay, well, what's a differentiator? I would say a differentiator is those are accomplishments that you did that someone else with the same or similar title can't say. Um, a false differentiator would be a resume that's filled with a lot of words like hardworking, great communicator, responsible, thorough, detail oriented. you you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
And so many times I think the first versions or two of our CVs have those words in them, and it's okay to have a few of those words. However, really what we're looking for in differentiators are putting substance to those words. You need to show how you're hardworking. You need to show how you are detail oriented. And so, and the way to do that is by showing those accomplishments that you've held in various positions. And so those are things that I would say are really important when it comes to building a resume. One of the things that I see all too often as a recruiter in the space is that there's too many bullet points, way too many bullet points. And sometimes we'll have a job description, and hiring managers, when I work with them on finding a candidate for a role, they say, please don't send me someone who has just spent time copying over the job description of their last job and put it in their resume. They hate that. And you may think that it shows what you did in your last role, but it really just shows what you were supposed to do in your last role. And it doesn't really go through and highlight any accomplishments, anything that you did well. And so don't be the person who just copies over the job description from their last role and paste it onto their resume. Be more specific, be better than that. Spend time going through. It's okay to bring out the old job description and make some notes. Okay, how good was I at this? Oh, wow, I was actually really, really detailed, and I didn't have a single project that came in late. Things like that. Whenever you can put numbers on your resume, those are things that stick out. And so if we were to look through a number of resumes, I think as you look through, you would find that the numbers are really things that stick out. And so if you were able to say that you finished a project X number of months ahead of time, or every position is different from one position to another, but find ways to really make it specific so that someone with the same exact title or similar position that you've held isn't going to be able to say the same thing. That's really how you can uniquely tailor your resume to yourself and stand out from the crowd. The other thing I would say too is adjust your resume depending on what you're applying for. Have multiple versions of your CV. If you're applying it, say you've had some experience in risk management, and you've got some experience also in safety operations, and you really like both of them, you could do a job in either. Well, some companies you may be able to do both, but a lot of companies, they're going to have those broken out into safety science and another one into safety operations. And so you have to have some different versions to highlight those skill sets in your resume, and so that the person who sees your resume for safety science in that position doesn't look at it and go, well, this is just an operations person. They're not going to have the specifics about aggregate reporting and things that I need. And then the person who you interview a job or you apply for in an operations role is going to look at it and go, well, this person's more of a PV scientist. So make sure that you don't shoot yourself in the foot by having different versions of your resume and know where you sent them to various employers. And so again, we could talk a lot more about resumes, but let's just leave it there for now. I think let's touch a little bit on interviews. I think that would hopefully be helpful for our listeners too. If you have gotten to the point where you've gotten through that front door, you've got an interview. I'd like to give a few tips on that note as well. I would say do your homework. Really do your research. Research. Prepare questions. Those are things that really will help you stand out in the interview. So you stood out with your resume, now we want you to stand out in the interview. You want to get that job. And in order to do that, you've got to stand out in a good way, prepare questions, thoughtful things that will help you to understand how you're going to fit in and how you're going to take things away from the hiring manager. Lots of times when they're hiring, they're overworked, they're having to do 2-3 different jobs, and you are a huge blessing to them if you can take a lot of things off their plate. And so help them understand that you're there to do that. Look the part, present yourself well. I noticed that we're both wearing ties. If you're interviewing, I think I recommend it. I wouldn't say that every company. I've been to different companies to visit, and some are very laid back and casual. Some are much more formal. Always, as a rule of thumb, as you're interviewing, it's a lot easier to dress down than it is to dress up. Yeah. You're going to have a hard time if you go in and you're maybe business casual and you just have a golf polo shirt on and everyone there is wearing button-up shirts, and I don't know. It's a lot easier to dress down than dress up, and so present yourself well, look the part. When it comes to the conversations that you have, I would avoid answering yes or no to questions as much as possible. It doesn't give you the opportunity to sell yourself, to shine, which is what you're trying to do during the interview. Avoid over answering, but be descriptive in your answers. Be ready to sell yourself, but don't be arrogant. So another don't, I would say, is don't talk bad about your current employer. Don't talk bad about your current boss. You may not like the guy, you may not like the gal, whoever it is. Don't talk bad about them. It reflects poorly on you. At the end of the day, if you're saying bad things about your current employer or past employers, or, oh, I had to get out of there. If somebody asks you about why did you move from this company to that company, be careful in those types of responses, especially if it was a situation where you hated your job. It's okay that you hated your job. It's okay that you didn't really get along with your boss, but be careful in how you respond to that, because it's going to reflect on you. And when they're interviewing you, they're thinking, okay, what's he going to be saying about me if I hire him for this role? So, I think another thought here is, if you do end up wanting the position, if at the end of it, be assertive. If you want the job, don't leave them guessing of how interested you are in it. I have that happen all too often as well, where someone's well qualified, interviews for a position, and then they end up walking away, and the hiring manager comes back to me and says, well, yeah, he or she was pretty good, but I couldn't tell if they were really even interested in the role. Don't leave them guessing that. Be assertive. Even if you don't want the position, don't burn bridges. It's a small world out there, and a lot of times you'll bump into the same people again. And so I'd say also send a thank you note. In most cases, an email, something that's going to be another way to show your interest in the opportunity, to show your assertiveness, is sending a thank you note. And so I'll stop there. I'm sorry. I went
Yeah.
a little long on it.
Yeah, but it's very interesting. So we can hear and hear and hear. So thank you very much, Jarvis. We are blessed to have you today in our webinar. So yeah, I can also, as you said, as mentioned, the homework, research about the company, information about the company, about their projects, their therapeutic area, all of these. It's very, very important. Uh, and that's what we are providing also with our certification and drug safety and pharmacovigilance training. Uh, all these tips, not the tips for interviews and as much as you can share with us, but the knowledge, the regulation, the terminology, the PV operation, case processing, the what is the signal detection, the risk management system, the pharmacovigilance system, audits and inspections to help fresh graduates and other professionals which they are not in the PV space and drug safety to join this field and this space, which is and growing more and more. So for our attendees.